Hello everyone, welcome to Mini Max Measures. Today we are going to discuss the sixth chapter of Year 9 CBSE syllabus. The chapter is Lines and Angles and it is related to geometry. Okay, in this chapter we will be discussing different types of angles, its properties, and different problems related to this angles, lines and angles. Okay, so before we go into the details of this lesson, we will just have a quick recap of this topic, lines and angles. What do you mean by an angle? An angle is formed when two rays intersect each other. Which are the different types of angles when two rays intersect each other? Okay, the different types of angles are, first one is an acute angle. Acute angle means an angle which measures from 0 to 90 degree. It will be less than 90 degree. Okay, and this is the first figure is the acute angle. And second type of angle is the right angle. Right angle means it makes an angle 90 degree. That means the rays are perpendicular to each other. Then the angle formed in between the rays is called, is it will be equal to 90 degree and it is called right angle. And what happens when it is more than 90 degree? It measures more than 90 degrees. That means 90 degrees to 180 degree. We call that angle as an obtuse angle. And what happens when these two rays form a straight line? So we call it as a straight angle. The angle on a straight line is always 180 degrees. Okay, that is the fourth figure. The angle on a straight line, we call it as a straight angle and the measure is 180 degrees. And what do you mean by reflex angle? Reflex angle is actually the remaining part of the complete turn. When we remove the obtuse angle from a full turn, we call it as a reflex angle. Means, see, first we have an acute angle here. The measure of that angle is marked as x. So the reflex angle will be when we subtract this angle measure x from this full turn 360, then it is a reflex angle of that x. When you subtract x from the full turn, so the full turn angle will be 360. So when you subtract x from 360, that is the measure of that reflex angle there. What happens when you come to the second figure, which is 90 degrees? So what will be the reflex angle over there? So the reflex angle will be when you subtract that y from that 360 degrees. Here the measure of y, which we know that already because it is not because it is a right angle, it is 90 degrees. So when you subtract 360 from when you subtract 90 from that 360, it is called the reflex angle of 90 degrees. 360 minus 90, which is 270. So 270 is the reflex angle of that 90 degree. Okay, so similarly we can just subtract this obtuse angle, the measure of obtuse angle also from 360. We will get the reflex angle of that 360 over there, of that Z angle over there. And when you subtract the fourth figure, when you subtract 180 from that 360, we will get the reflex angle of 180. That is the below part of that 180 degrees, which is again equal to 180. So reflex angle means always we subtract the angle measure from 360, we will get the reflex angle. So 180, always the reflex angle measures from 180 to 360. The minimum value will be 180 and the maximum value will be 360. So these are the different basic types of angles when two rays intersect. Okay, so that intersecting point that you already know, what is the name of the intersecting point of two rays? what we call the intersecting point. The intersecting point, we call it as a vertex. And the two rays which forms an angle, we call those two rays are called the arms of an angle. Okay, so these are the different terminologies and different types of angles. Now, when we move on to the next session, we can call different types of angles when you combine, when you join different types of angles together. First type of angles is adjacent angle. Adjacent angle means when two acute angles are combined together. When you joined two acute angles together, we call it as adjacent angles. Okay, so here ABD and DBC are two angles given here, and it is combined together. That means it has a common vertex and a common arm. Which is the common vertex of these two angles? The common vertex is B and the common arm is BD. So that is the two adjacent angles together. And there is a particular type of adjacent angle. When you combine two angles together, and that makes the straight line angles. When the adjacent angles form a straight line, we call them by a particular name. That pairs of angles are called linear pair of angles. So linear pair of angles means what? They combine, the adjacent angles combined to form a straight line. So here we can see that ABD and DBC are two adjacent angles because they have one common vertex and one common arm. Common vertex is B and common arm is BD. So when they combine together, we get a straight line ABC there. So two adjacent angles combine together and form a straight line. We call it as a linear pair. So what is the angle of that linear pair angle? When you add that to the measures of two adjacent angles, what will be the measure of that linear pair? Sum of the angles of the linear pair. We already discussed the angle on a straight line. Angle on a straight line is 180 degrees. So here we say that when linear pair is formed, two angles form a straight line. So that is connected with the angle on a straight line. So what is the meaning? Linear pair measures the sum of two angles. The angles in the linear pair is equal to what? Equal to 180 degrees. So and here we can say that angle ABD and angle DBC equal to 180 degrees. Linear pair angles always equal to 180 degrees. Sum of linear pair angles always equal to 180 degrees because they form a straight line. Linear pair angles.